Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. The webinar will be about writing admissions essay for undergraduate study in the US. My name is Basha. I'm an Education USA advisor. I'm joined by Lorenzo Wilcox from University of Oregon, who will run tonight's webinar for us. Before we begin, just so you are aware, the webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to view later this week on our YouTube channel. So let's get started. Lorenzo, off to you.
Alrighty, yeah, thanks so much. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lorenzo Wilcox, and I'm Assistant Director for International Admissions here at the University of Oregon, which is a university located in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And so I'm just here to talk to you a little bit about kind of a major application component for the US, which is the admissions essay or your personal statement, or one of those variations of writing samples that our students usually need to submit when you're thinking about applying to an American university, right? So what I'm hoping to do is I wanted to share a little bit about why we're kind of evaluating this when we review your application for admission. Why is it important for us? I also want to share a little bit about the different prompts that you might be able to, that you might encounter in the process. And then at the end, we're going to go over a couple of essays to identify kind of some strengths within those writing samples and maybe some things not to do in the future during your process. So a little bit as to why the college essay is so important for us. And one of the things that I usually mention to students that are thinking of applying to the US is that the essay, if you think about it, it's kind of your only chance for you to have direct control and to write about your own story and really tell us what you want to share, right? Because the other documents are usually might be a test score, might be your academic grades throughout various years, right? And that's already done, right? So your story, it's really the essay. So that's really a great strength of this writing sample. It tells us kind of what your personal narrative might be. I like to say that it's a place for you to share about your fit and your values, right? Because if you've heard about this idea of finding the best fit when you're looking at different universities, it goes both ways, right? So you're also trying to find the right university for you, but we're trying to find the right student for our community, right? So the essay and learning about your story, learning about you, that's really what helps us do that. So that is a kind of a big reason why we ask you to submit this. The other thing is that a lot of universities in the United States use what they call a holistic review when they evaluate an application for admission. And holistic review is kind of an approach that we have towards evaluation that not only takes into account your academic factors, but also your non-academic factors, which can be many. A big one would be the essay, but also you can think about, letters of recommendation or extracurriculars or perhaps interviews and things like that, right? So these are non-academic factors that also have some weight. And the essay is a principal factor in that. We also use your essays not just for admissions, but also for scholarships, right? So a lot of the times we'll use kind of those writing samples that have told us about you in a little more personal context to see if we can award some, scholarships for you as part of that process. So again, very important when it comes to that. There's also, you'll find in the application some areas to add additional information not pertaining to your college essay. What I mean by this is sometimes maybe the start of kind of senior school or high school for you, was not the best, right? And maybe, or something happened, a life event, we're all human, we know these things can happen. But maybe that was the beginning of your experience. And we allow you to explain that in these special circumstance essays or additional information essays to really give us that context. And since we are the ones reading that application, it really plays to your benefit to write about those experiences and tell us what happened so that we have a better lens to evaluate you with and through, right? So That is kind of one example that you'll see throughout the application forms. And then finally, it's a great way to showcase where you're at with your writing skills, your communication skills, but also I would say your critical thinking skills. A lot of these essay prompts will kind of tell you to share or write about a particular obstacle maybe that you faced in your life, but more importantly, what you've learned from it and how you've grown, right? So we're really looking for those critical thinking skills that got you from point A to point B, and how you're going to use that in the future. So that's just a little bit as to why we're, looking at this writing sample in your college essay, a little more in our evaluation process. I mentioned a little bit about, additional information essays or supplemental essays. If you ever have the option to write these, I definitely encourage you to take advantage of that and share more, about a topic that's specific to the supplemental essay. Sometimes a lot of universities will say, we'll have your main personal essay, but also we'll ask you to write a specific kind of half a page of why you want to apply to that university specifically, right? So that's an example of a supplemental essay that you definitely want to focus on. You want to do some research about as well and learn about why you're passionate about it, that institution. And then the other ones are, your special circumstance essay or anything else like that, or maybe an essay specific for academic program that can be a little more competitive. So you need to kind of differentiate yourself from other candidates by writing more samples like that through those essays. All in all, it just demonstrates more interest from you in a particular program or institution. So I was mentioning a little bit about the typical essay prompts that you can find, right? So especially if you're like looking at the common application or a lot of these platforms really share a lot of these prompts. But there's about, 8 or so ideas to help you brainstorm, to help you kind of come up with an outline of what you want to write. And these are just some examples that you can see on your screen. A lot of them really want you to share about your personal growth. And this is kind of goes back to what I was saying about that critical thinking. And even if you're going to write about an obstacle or a challenge that you faced in your life, that's great, but we don't just want to learn about that. We would love to learn about how that's affected you and how maybe that's inspired you to pursue a particular program, or maybe it allow you to grow in a particular way, right? So we want to kind of hear that conclusion of that particular challenge that you face. And a lot of times you'll also have the ability to write about a topic of your own choice, something that you're really passionate about and you want to share. But the important thing is that you keep it personal, you keep it about yourself, and you use your own words. I think if you do that, any prompt works because essentially we're learning about you, and that's the main goal of this kind of a component of your application. So a little bit of, the process of writing a college essay, and I'm not an English teacher by any means, so this is more of kind of just what we've learned that helps students navigate this particular component. First, never submit your first draft, right? So you always want to identify someone to proofread, someone to give you some advice as to how your essay is going. That could very well be an English teacher or your counselor, someone that you feel comfortable with reading, because sometimes kind of what you write can be quite personal, right? But you really only have to get as personal as you would like to get. But it's always recommended to have someone that you trust that can proofread your essay and give you some advice as to the context and the content that you're using in that assignment. It's also great to start your essay early. The great thing about the US, so typically applications open on August 1st, for the following year. And you oftentimes you can have about 5 or 6 months to really work on these application components, right? Because regular deadlines are usually in January, maybe February 1st, that might be kind of the later ones. So you have some time, right? And we'll give you the prompts from early on so that you can start really outlining what you want to say. And what I want to mention with this as well is that it's not a lot of space, right? It's only about 650 words, if I'm not mistaken. So that's about a page and a half. So there's really, the room can kind of shrink quickly in the space of what you can write. So you have to really outline it wisely and creatively as well. More importantly, what would help you do this is to have a prompt that you really connect with personally. And again, there's 7 or 8 different options, so chances are you will find something that speaks to you. That's going to be the best way for you to be engaged in your topic. And through doing that, we can really get that as well from the admissions review side, right? We can get your engagement, get your connectiveness, connection with that particular prompt. And here we just kind of list some of the things that stand out in the college essay from what we've seen. And it can be many different factors, but sometimes, students will cover these broad topics that will show like cultural awareness. Maybe they'll talk a little bit about leadership experience or community type experience as well, or essentially learning experiences that relate to growth in one's life. These are really important topics that if you have a way to talk about them, they can really add on to your profile as an applicant. And just some final tips. This is not a thesis, right? So we don't want you to go out and write with a dictionary on your hand and choose kind of the biggest words that you find. That would take away from who we are, right? Or the way that we write and tell our stories. And that's not the goal of this essay. But it is a writing sample that you're submitting to an academic institution, right? So it has to be in a professional manner, right? So it has to be cohesive. It has to have good grammar, good punctuation. And this is why proofreading is going to be hugely important as you go through this process, because it's not at the level of thesis, but it's also a writing sample that determines kind of how your writing skills are, right? One of the first courses that you take in college is going to be writing. And so you also want to make sure that you're showing that you're ready to do that level of work at the university. The other thing is follow instructions. Sometimes students kind of choose a prompt but don't really answer it completely. You'll notice that a lot of these prompts, they have multiple parts. They have different questions that we want you to answer within one general topic. So it's always important for you to kind of just create your own outline to make sure that you are saying everything that you want to say, but also that you need to say to respond fully to that question. So the other thing is also stick to the word count. Unfortunately, if you kind of keep going, the platforms typically just cut it off right there. And so you really need to stick to that 650 words, which again is about a page and a half. So just keep that in mind. Don't miss the deadline, it's very important. But more importantly, make it you, right? Be yourself. This is your story. One thing I like to say, sometimes universities don't require letters of recommendation. So you can think of this essay as your way of recommending yourself for admission, right? And sharing what the passion that you have, sharing your story, sharing your growth, right? So really just make it about you, and your essay will work out just fine, as long as it's authentic, which is kind of one thing that we really like to stress to our students. Keep it authentic, keep it personal, and just write in the way that you would share your story with someone else. I think next up, I do realize this probably looks very small in your screen. So what I'm hoping to do is I'm going to break this down, right? But I have 2 examples of 2 essays. And the goal with this is to give you an idea of what works, kind of what we're looking for perhaps, and maybe what not to do when you're writing a college essay. So again, I don't expect you to read all of this because it can be pretty small. But this is a student who's talking about, this is a student who has an Etsy store. And so they're, they're into arts and crafts and also into science, right? So they're combining 2 different disciplines that they're passionate about, and they're sharing how that's allowed them to perhaps grow as a person, and how they're going to continue that in the college setting. Now, one of the things that comes out from this is creativity, because the student is talking about 2 different identities, but not just mentioning them. They're really elaborating on these 2 different identities that make up who they are. right? So they're getting quite personal about this, and really showing who they are as a person and how each identity might conflict with each other, but also how each identity complements each other, right? So, and that is kind of how they conclude, right? They're saying basically that for them, they want to be a scientist, right? That's what they want to go to college for. But they're saying that to become a scientist, they've learned that they need to be and allow themselves to be more creative, right? So that is where their arts background comes in. So it's a nice way to really share about what you're passionate about through different activities that you've been doing, perhaps that you've been involved in already, and how you found out that those two identities really complement each other and will help you be more successful in your future as well in college, right? So that is an example of a good essay. It flows well. You can see just based on the structure, it's easy to read, and that is also a thing that should be in mind for you as you kind of submit this writing, because the other example is this, right? So automatically I think this is pretty hard to read, just or to follow. It's all in one paragraph. There's no real breaks. There's a lot of run-on sentences, perhaps. This is an example of an essay that was really talking about various topics. I think it was adding too much, and not just elaborating on one main thing, right? It's okay to have a couple of topics, right? Like the previous essay has two different identities that they're kind of exploring. That's fine. But if you're trying to kind of just talk, about one topic and you're only adding a couple sentences and then going on to something else and then on to something else, that can be hard to follow. And it doesn't give that much weight, perhaps, to your essay, right? So this is one thing to be on the lookout for. You don't want to write an essay that's too broad. You really want to focus on a particular event, on a particular thing or concept, and elaborate on that particularly. This is also an example where the collegiate level writing was not showing fully. There was some grammar issues. There were some run-on sentences. Of course, the structure is just one full-on paragraph. As we can see with the other essay, you definitely have the opportunity to break that up and really show the different sections of what you want to write. Not following directions in a way of kind of answering fully the prompts. And as you can see here, it's not a clear point to the essay, right? So these are not things that you want to do on when you submit your essay. You really want to make sure, again, you keep it specific. Don't just recount, but really elaborate on something. Show your critical thinking, show your learned experience from it. That's a better way to really submit your essay. And you don't know, I always say you don't always have to write 650 words. If you've said it fully in 580, that's fine. If you've really shared what you want to share, it feels good to you, that's okay. We just want you to kind of be a little more specific in what you write. And this is an example that shows they're kind of trying to tackle too many things at once. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense a little bit and that was helpful. I know it's tough to read sometimes through the screen, but I was just trying to break those down for you as examples of how it looks like to us, and then kind of what you can do and what you cannot do when you submit these essays. I believe we want to open it up for questions right now through the Q&A. Please feel free to submit any thoughts that you have, any questions, any doubts that I can answer at the moment. That'd be great.
Thank you, Lorenzo. That
Yeah.
was really good. Please feel free for anyone that's on here just to type in any questions that you might have. But I actually have a question before any pop out.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys have a limited time to read the applications and the essays. Can you give us some like inside, I guess, scoop of what grabs your attention maybe, and why is it important because of that time limit that you have for each application?
Yeah. I think the first essay I showed had kind of like a nice attention grabber of a start. I think for me it's more of making it creative. Yeah, we can go back. I mean, you're kind of presenting the topic, and you're kind of seeing that, oh, you're gonna talk about fashion and science, seeing how different, completely different things are gonna complement each other, right? So you're already interested in what's gonna happen and how they're gonna connect these points. That's just an example. I mean, really, it's for me, authenticity is the thing that comes kind of that's the most important, really, in this process. And you can really gauge that. I mean, you can, as you read something, you can really tell students are really passionate about something, who truly took their time to write about this. It really comes across. So that's the most important. But as long as you can be a little creative, but also don't get away from your point that you want to make. That's the most important part. But that's just an example. Essay one is a good one of kind of what structure works, and how we can easily follow it, right? Because as we say, sometimes there's a lot of applications. We're trying to kind of grab those important points that makes you who you are in your essay.
Great. And then you kind of mentioned it already, but is it easy for you to spot someone who, took time writing the essay, from someone who kind of submitted it last minute without, taking their time to actually think about the subject or the area, or
Oh yeah,
maybe, cheated and used a bit of chat GT?
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's you can definitely kind of get that sense. The our favorite ones are, when you have the wrong university name in the essay, right? Then it's clear that something happened here. There was not a lot of thought put into this. Yeah, ChatGPT is kind of the new one coming across. It's you can always tell. I mean, and really, I say this is not a thesis, right? We're not asking you to kind of work on a 35-page, project on this. So there's really no need to have someone else do this work, because we really just want to um listen to your story. So yeah, you can always kind of tell the authenticity that comes across, or not. But yeah,
Yes, and definitely proofread that you sending
yeah.
the right essay to the correct university.
Yeah, that can hurt. That can hurt students candidacy to a university.
It doesn't seem like we have any questions. But if people do have any questions about the admissions essays, or any of or just questions about admission overall, please feel free to email us. Our email is advising@fulbright.org.uk. I'll just pop it in the chat as well. Um, if you bear with me. And like I said, the webinar is recorded. Oh, there's one question. Um, Someone asked if they can mention extracurriculars in their essays, or should they avoid that and maybe leave it for the extracurricular section?
No, that's a great question. So, most of it I would leave for the extracurricular section. However, if it's an extracurriculars that maybe aligns really well with your passion and what you want to study and connects well with your essay, you can mention it. What we want to avoid is that you replicate your resume on your essay, basically, right? We don't want you to kind of just write about each activity in your essay, because you'll already do that in the extracurricular section. That's why if you have one particular one that's really a passion for you, you can definitely elaborate on that one. That's fine, and include it in both. But yeah,
Great. Give it a couple more seconds, see if any questions pop up.
sure.
It doesn't seem so. In that case, Lorenzo, thank you so much. Oh, every time I say that, a question pops up. So, um, would a passion project be a good topic for your essay, since since the students dedicated time and effort and perhaps grown through that activity?
Yes, definitely. That's yeah. A lot of these can be very specific and very unique as well, right? Because you can be passionate about science, let's say, but in a really particular branch of it that speaks to you. That's a great way to show kind of uniqueness through your essay. So definitely write about that, and elaborate fully, as you said, show not just kind of what you love to do, but how you've grown from it.
I would say for the most part, if you do something unique that you could write about and talk about and link it to the university, it would be a good topic. Is that correct?
Definitely. Yeah.
We do have one more question. It's about extracurricular section. Can I put sports even if I'm not a competitive player? I have heard that
Yes.
colleges don't seem to like that.
No, we do. I mean, basically what I say is quality over quantity. It's good. I mean, if you've played a sport, just for fun, for the last 3 or 4 years, definitely include it. It's part of your time and everyday life, right? So it's part of you. If I do like some variety. It's always good. So sports is great. Maybe you've done some work with an organization in the community. That's great. Maybe you have a part-time job or you have family responsibilities. That's extracurriculars as well, list it. You're doing independent research or passion project, go for it and list it. There's not an exact rubric or kind of thing that we're looking for, but what I meant by quality over quantity is sometimes students might add a volunteer like day that they did in the first year of high school for 8 hours that day, and that was it, right? So that doesn't quite show your commitment to an activity, right? So, and that's what I was meaning with that. It's better to list the quality of your involvement than just adding things just to add them. But sports, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also do have a webinar about extracurricular activities and kind of Lorenzo, like what you mentioned, it kind of explains that quality over quantity. And it also has some great tips on how to write them and what order to put them in as well. So the better quantity, no, sorry, the better quality should be
Yeah,
first over the quantity, if that makes sense.
exactly.
How can an applicant ensure their essay effectively addresses the prompt while still standing out from other applicants' essay?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so as I was mentioning, typically the prompts will have multiple parts to them. So the first step is to um, ensure that you are fully answering each question or fully attending to each point that the prompt wants you to make. The way to stand out is always going to be writing it about you. And I do understand students can have similar experiences, but there's always going to be something unique. About you and you having that particular experience, right? So as long as you stay true to that, then you will be able to stand out in an essay while still answering the prompts fully.
Yeah, definitely. That's like, I think the top tip is just to be yourself in the essays.
Yeah, that's the easiest, and it should be the easiest thing to do, right? Just share your own voice, which is important.
Yeah. This time I will wait a couple more seconds just in case.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for the questions. So hopefully this is helpful for you all as you kind of start this process.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like you gave some good tips about where to even start.
Yeah,
Because sometimes when you read it on paper, you might read the question on the Common App, and English statements for universities here are completely different to the American
yeah,
ones. Just like in the rest of Europe, the admission process is a bit different. So,
exactly.
so just knowing about how, you need to be a bit more personal is actually a great tip.
Right.
Okay, we got one more question in. Given that the admission essay is general and about you as a person, would it be a problem if you discuss your particular experience when visiting a certain university, perhaps your dream choice? Would it put off other universities?
I want to make sure I'm understanding the
So
question.
I think they're talking about like let's just say if they apply to University of Oregon, but
Mm,
in the essay they actually talk about a particular experience when they visited a certain
I see.
university of their dream choice that wasn't the one they're applying to. Would that put you guys off?
I don't, well, I no, I mean I don't see it as that. I think like oftentimes students will share even in their extracurriculars that they did a 2 week program, a 3 week program at a particular university, and obviously it's a different one that they're applying to. I mean, I don't see that as putting us off. I think it's just you talking about the experience. I think there's got to be a reason why you're applying to a particular university, right? So even though you've experienced something at another institution and it's inspired you to go into a particular career, you would probably want to connect it to what the university you're applying to could offer you in that situation, right? So I think if there's that connection, then I don't think it's a negative thing. You're just sharing about something that you've learned at this particular place. Maybe don't say it's your dream choice, and you're still applying to another university. But just connect it with kind of what that current institution can offer you, right? So that would be my advice, but it wouldn't be a negative thing in this way, at least for me.
And that kind of goes with what you mentioned at the beginning, is that fit. So
Yeah,
the student, why they're applying to that university, but also how the university views the student as fitting in with their campus and their student life.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
All good.
Just accidentally rolled my mouse. Couple more seconds to see if we have any other questions that people might want to ask. Okay, I think that is actually it with all the questions. So Lorenzo, once again, thank you so much for running this webinar. It was very useful, some useful tips. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions about the admissions process, you could email us and we'll be able to answer any of your questions. Lorenzo, I hope you have a good day because I know it's quite early there in Oregon. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. You too. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.